Welcome to my channel World Scene News. Subscribe to my channel for news updates all around the world. The morning of November 25, 2025, shattered the usual calm in the White House. What began as a routine day quickly spiraled into chaos as the first rays of sunlight crept over the Capitol. The air was thick with tension, and a sense of foreboding seemed to hang over the historic building. President Trump, already on edge from weeks of mounting international pressure, slammed an intelligence briefing onto his desk. Venezuela was now sending nearly all its oil to China. The news was more than just a diplomatic setback. It was a direct challenge to American power and prestige. The administration's sanctions, meant to cripple Maduro and force him to the negotiating table, had backfired spectacularly. Instead of isolating Venezuela, the measures had pushed Caracas into the arms of America's biggest rival. Instead of negotiating with the US, Caracas had forged a powerful alliance with Beijing, threatening to upend global energy markets. The two nations, once distant partners, were now united by a shared interest in challenging American dominance. Aides scrambled, phones rang, and the sense of crisis was immediate. The West Wing, usually a place of controlled chaos, now felt like the epicenter of a geopolitical earthquake. Every department was on high alert, searching for answers and solutions. Nearly 90% of Venezuela's oil, once destined for US refineries, now flowed across the Pacific. The shift was not just economic, it was symbolic, signaling a dramatic realignment in global energy flows. This was more than a policy failure. It was a blow to American influence and Trump's image as a dealmaker. The administration's strategy had not only failed to achieve its goals, but it also emboldened America's adversaries. The Venezuela-China Pact was a bold declaration. The world's rules were changing. Old alliances were being tested, and new power centers were emerging, leaving Washington scrambling to keep up. The day's agenda was scrapped. Crafting a response became the only priority. As the sun rose higher over Washington, the administration faced a stark reality. The balance of power was shifting, and America's next move would shape the world's future. Venezuela holds the world's largest proven oil reserves, a geological fortune that once promised prosperity and global influence. For much of the 20th century, oil was the lifeblood of Venezuela's economy, transforming the nation into a powerhouse on the world stage. The sheer scale of its reserves drew the attention of superpowers, eager to secure a steady flow of energy. At its peak, Venezuela was a titan of energy, exporting millions of barrels daily and serving as a key supplier to the United States. Oil tankers lined up at bustling ports, carrying the nation's wealth across the seas. For decades, U.S. refineries relied on Venezuela's unique heavy crude, which was perfectly suited for their complex processing systems. This created a vital economic bond, intertwining the destinies of both nations and fueling American industry. But beneath the surface, years of mismanagement, rampant corruption, and political upheaval began to erode the foundations of Venezuela's oil empire. Infrastructure was neglected, investments dried up, and expertise fled the country. PDVSA, the state oil company once hailed for its efficiency and innovation, became a hollow shell, plagued by decay and inefficiency. Offices that once buzzed with activity now stood empty, a stark symbol of decline. By 2025, the consequences were undeniable. Oil production had collapsed to historic lows, infrastructure crumbled, and exports plummeted. Once thriving oil fields became graveyards of rusted rigs and broken pipelines. Despite this dramatic decline, Venezuela's heavy crude remains strategically important. Its absence from global markets has distorted oil prices, fueling volatility and uncertainty for importers worldwide. Now, with nearly all remaining exports rerouted to China, the United States has lost more than just oil. It has lost leverage, influence, and a historic partnership that once shaped hemispheric politics. The black gold of Caracas now fuels China's booming economy, powering its industries and strengthening its global position, while America looks elsewhere for alternatives. In this new era, a powerful energy axis has emerged, one that deliberately excludes the United States, reshaping the balance of power in the global energy landscape. U.S. sanctions aim to force regime change in Venezuela by choking off oil revenue. Instead, they pushed Caracas to seek new partners, chief among them, China. The final blow came when U.S. waivers expired in May 2025, leaving China as Venezuela's only major buyer. Sanctions, meant to isolate, became a funnel directing oil to Beijing. The US underestimated China's willingness to defy American pressure. Now, Washington's leverage is gone, Venezuela has a lifeline, and China controls a key oil source. The policy's unintended consequence empowering adversaries and redrawing global alliances. The US finds itself sidelined by its own strategy. China's move to absorb Venezuela's oil is both economic and geopolitical. As the world's top oil importer, China craves supply security. Venezuela offers that, especially amid global volatility. Decades of oil-for-loan deals mean China now collects oil as debt repayment, often at a discount. This gives Chinese refineries an edge and chips away at Venezuela's debt. Beyond economics, China's partnership signals to the world US sanctions can be bypassed. Beijing deepens its influence in Latin America, challenging US dominance. Yet China treads carefully, wary of Venezuela's instability and US retaliation, using discreet methods to avoid direct exposure. It's a sophisticated strategy, expanding power without provoking open conflict. The China alliance keeps Maduro afloat but doesn't fix Venezuela's broken oil sector. PDVSA is crippled by corruption, brain drain, and decaying infrastructure. Even with China as a buyer, production is erratic, dependent on foreign diluents just to move oil. October's export slump exposed this fragility. New contracts offer foreign firms more control, but risks remain high. Sanctions and instability deter investment. Critics warn these deals erode sovereignty and transparency. The industry is trapped, desperate for capital, but too risky to attract it. Venezuela's oil now flows to China through opaque, off-market deals, creating a shadow market. This reduces global supply, especially of heavy crude, forcing US and European refineries to seek pricier alternatives. The October export drop shocked markets, highlighting Venezuela's unreliability. Price spikes can now be triggered by technical failures, not just geopolitics. Confidence in global energy stability is eroding. Other nations are watching, learning to use resources as leverage against the West. The once integrated oil market is fragmenting into rival blocs, making energy more politicized and volatile. The Trump administration's response threats of secondary sanctions targeting any company trading with Venezuela, including Chinese firms, but sanctioning major Chinese corporations risks global economic chaos and could accelerate moves away from the US dollar. Military posturing, US warships near Venezuela, adds pressure, but raises tensions. The US gambles that threats will force Caracas or Beijing to back down. So far, neither has flinched. The alliance only grows stronger. America is discovering the limits of its power in a multipolar world. Its strategy has solidified the Venezuela-China axis, not broken it. The Venezuela-China pact signals a possible restructuring of the global energy order. For decades, oil markets revolved around the US dollar and Western benchmarks. Now a parallel system is emerging, transactions outside Western oversight, often in other currencies. Russia, Iran, and others are joining China to form an alternative energy bloc, challenging US dominance. Oil-rich nations see new leverage as China offers investment without political strings. This could spark fierce competition for influence over key producers. Yet, these new alliances are fragile, built on expediency, not trust. The future, a fragmented, volatile market where power is up for grabs. The recent Venezuela-China oil deal has sent shockwaves through the global energy landscape, leaving the oil market facing a storm of uncertainty. This agreement, forged between two major players, has the potential to reshape alliances and disrupt established trade flows. As the world watches, the stakes have never been higher for producers, consumers, and governments alike. Volatility will define the near future. Venezuela's oil supply remains fragile, vulnerable to both internal instability and external pressures. Meanwhile, US actions, whether through sanctions or diplomatic maneuvers, could escalate tensions and send shockwaves through the market. Every headline, every policy shift, now has the power to move prices and unsettle economies. Three scenarios loom on the horizon. The first is a tense status quo, where uncertainty lingers and markets remain on edge, with no clear resolution in sight. The second, is a disruptive clash, should secondary sanctions be imposed. This could trigger a chain reaction, disrupting supply chains, sparking protests, and forcing companies to rethink their global strategies. The third, more optimistic scenario, is a diplomatic breakthrough that reintegrates Venezuela into the global oil market, opening doors for new partnerships and stabilizing prices. In this new era, businesses and consumers must now factor geopolitics into every energy decision. From the boardroom to the gas pump, uncertainty is the new normal, and risk management has become a daily concern. The era of predictable oil markets is over. Price swings, supply disruptions, and political maneuvering are now part of the landscape, challenging old assumptions and demanding new strategies. This alliance between Venezuela and China highlights the limits of U.S. pressure and signals the rise of a multipolar world where influence is shared and power dynamics are constantly shifting. The coming months will be critical. Will this new reality lead to open conflict, or will the world find a new equilibrium? The answers will shape not just energy markets, but the global order itself. For now, the world watches with bated breath, bracing for what's next as the storm gathers on the horizon.